Yes. So, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's workshop. I am Dr. Mi-kyung Han. I'm a professor at the School of Social Work at San Jose State University. Additionally, I work as a project specialist at the Ohana Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Behavioral Health Center of Excellence. As a brief introduction, originally from South Korea, I came to the United States as an international graduate student to pursue advanced education in social work. Since earning my doctoral degree, I have been working at San Jose State University as a first-generation immigrant. My area of interest is mental health issues, specifically focusing on Asian immigrants and Asian Americans. I am delighted to have you all here and eager to present on caregiving experiences among Asian American families of individuals with serious mental illnesses. While the workshop title already indicating it, to ensure clarity, I would like to make a disclaimer about the population that today's presentation will cover. Although this workshop is part of the Ohana Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Center of Excellence, as said, I will be focusing on Asian Americans only and will not include information about Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. We hope to offer similar training for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities in the future. Today's workshop comprises 4 topics, starting with the overview, followed by the findings from my own study with the Chinese and Vietnamese American family caregivers. Then I will share what we have learned and things to consider, and will close my presentation by sharing several available resources. First, I will present an overview of family caregivers of individuals with serious mental illnesses in general and with Asian Americans in particular. It's important to note that I will be using the acronym SMI to refer to serious mental illnesses and AA for Asian Americans. I will also use the term family caregivers to refer to individuals who have physical, emotional, and financial support to family members with SMI. While this term may not be perfect, when I use the phrase family caregivers in this presentation, it specifically refers to family members of people with SMIs. While you may have knowledge about SMIs, please allow me to provide a brief overview of the basics. In 2020, approximately 14.2 million adults, equivalent to 5.6% of adults, suffered from SMIs such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression. SMIs are medical conditions that can affect person's cognitive, emotional, and or behavioral functioning. Although full recovery is possible, they can also cause impairments and disability, requiring the person to rely on their family members for care, either temporarily or permanently. SMIs are typically identified during adolescence or early adulthood, with roughly 75% before the age of 24. Like any other illnesses, research have shown that regardless of when the SMI begins or the racial ethnic backgrounds, family involvement and support are essential for the recovery of a person with a SMI. While family support is vital for recovery, and family members can gain the satisfaction that comes with caregiving, providing care to family members with SMI can be a challenging and prolonged task. For example, according to the report from the National Alliance for Caregiving, family caregivers of SMIs patients provided care for an average of 8.7 years compared to 4 years for caregivers of individuals with other illnesses. Additionally, they spent an average of 32 hours per week providing care, which was 8 hours more than their counterpart. Also, about 45% of family caregivers resided with their ill members, while only 34% of their counterparts did. Such extended time spent providing care and a higher level of co-residency with the care recipients might contribute to their well-being. Not surprisingly, existing studies show that family caregivers often experience negative impacts on their mental health, quality of life, health, financial situation, social life, and family dynamics. Furthermore, family caregivers may face additional stress due to the stigma often associated with mental illnesses. In fact, studies indicate that family caregivers often feel undervalued or devalued by society to a greater extent than their other caregivers. Despite the critical role the family caregivers play in supporting their ill family members' recovery and the negative impact of caregiving on their well-being, relatively fewer empirical studies and resources are available to family caregivers in comparison to those caring for individuals with other illnesses such as dementia, Alzheimer, or cancer. Limited research and resources for family caregivers are even further scant for ethnic minorities, specifically AA families. It is essential to consider the culture when discussing the caregiving experience because the culture of a family can significantly impact the caregiving experience. Indeed, the family caregiver's culture shapes their perceptions of their loved one's mental needs, their ability to cope with the stress of caregiving, and how they engage with mental health care and support systems. Such limited information about AA family caregivers is a cause for concern because the AA population is rapidly growing. According to the Pew Research Center, AAs experience the highest population growth rate compared to all other racial and ethnic groups between 2000 and 2019. Also, despite the stereotype that AAs are a model minority and do not have many mental health problems, the fact is that mental health issues are prevalent and even growing in the AA community. For instance, according to the 2021 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, the occurrence of SMIs increased among AA young adults with a rise from 2.9% to 5.6% between 2008 and 2018. This report also shows an increase in major depressive episodes across all age groups from 2015 to 2018. So, the growing population and increased prevalence of mental health issues in these AA communities suggest that AA family caregivers are also growing, and more attention should be given to this population. Furthermore, it's well known that AAs have the lowest utilization of behavioral health services, with only 5.1% seeking help compared to the national average of 14.4%. It's widely recognized that The reason for low service utilization rate among AAs is primarily due to cultural and contextual structural factors. While many cultural values can contribute to the low service utilization, in this presentation, I will focus on two well-known cultural values specifically related to caregiving, namely familism and stigma. Asian cultural values strong family ties, loyalty, and collective responsibilities, where the family is perceived as the greater self. This sense of familism motivates AA family caregivers to stay committed to their ill family members despite of the hardships. They often choose to live with their ill family members and actively participated in their treatment. So all of this can assist in the ill family members' recovery. However, at the same time, AA family caregivers may face increased caregiving responsibilities and corresponding stresses. Additionally, the cultural norm of the saving face and preserving one's reputation is directly linked to mental health stigma. This norm is associated with the belief that mental illness is a result of bad thoughts, lack of willpower, personality weakness, karmic repayments for ancestors' misdeeds, or one's previous life. This belief can lead to increased negative attitudes toward people with SMIs, contribute to secrecy and concealment of individuals struggling with mental illnesses, and do not seek help for their treatment. So sadly, mental illness is highly stigmatized in AA community. And due to this stigma, many Asians tend to rely on self-control or informal support networks such as family or religious leaders before seeking professional help. Not only stigma itself tends to heighten fear and shame, which further negatively impact mental health, but it also contributes to delayed treatment that can lead to a downward cycle of worsening symptoms. Besides stigma, there are other structural barriers that can prevent ill family members from seeking mental health services. One such barrier is the unfamiliarity with mental health systems, which can be influenced by immigration status, acculturation level, and English proficiency. In addition, given what AAs prefer mental health professionals who share their ethnic backgrounds, yet there is a significant shortage of AA bilingual, bicultural mental health professionals. This deficit of suitable professionals can also create an additional barrier. So, in summary, the combination of the underutilization of mental health services and the tendency of co-residency could lead to increased caregiver burden again and decreased well-being among AA family caregivers. Besides, when the family caregivers needs mental health professional help for themselves, due to the exact same reasons, they may not seek help either and becomes hidden patients and clients themselves who need protection from potential health and mental health consequences. So up until this point, I have discussed how caregiving challenges can negatively affect the well-being of family caregivers. However, not all family caregivers experience decreased well-being. Indeed, research indicates that there are protective factors that can help alleviate the stress of caregiving. self-care practices and social support are important protective factors that are widely recognized in caregiving research. When it comes to caring for individuals with SMIs, based on the studies with primarily white family caregivers, several other critical protective factors beyond self-care and social support has been identified. The first one is caregivers' beliefs and attitudes toward recovery. Given that within the family, each member affects and is affected by others, family caregivers' positive attitudes can significantly affect how they handle the challenges of caring for their loved ones. Another factor is self-efficacy, which is one's belief in their capacity to handle difficult situations with confidence. The family caregiver's self-efficacy is known to be especially important when their loved ones go through psychiatric episodes. The good news is that positive attitudes and self-efficacy can be developed over time through service utilization. This includes accessing resources, education, and support services. As a matter of fact, studies show that utilizing formal services among family caregivers can enhance their belief in recovery, feeling of empowerment, and better coping skills, which can promote their well-being outcomes. So before proceeding to the next topic, as we are coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic era, it's important to briefly recognize and address the unique challenges that family caregivers faced during the pandemic. Just like everyone else, caregivers faced numerous challenges since the outbreak of the pandemic. They had concerns about their own health and were stressed due to public health measures and their consequences. In addition to these everyday challenges, caregiving became even more difficult and challenging, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, because some critical mental health services had been disrupted. As the pandemic's consequences unfold, research reveals that many individuals with SMIs experienced exacerbated symptoms and increased rates of relapse during the pandemic. As a result, many caregivers faced a double burden as they dealt with their own stresses while looking after their loved ones with SMIs. For AA family caregivers, the challenges were even compounded by anti-Asian sentiments and violence against AAs. So out of these pandemic-related factors suggest that as we transition into a post-pandemic era, it's important to focus on enhancing the well-being of everyone, especially family caregivers and particularly AA family caregivers. So thus far, I share that based on the literature review, family caregivers, especially those in the AA community, can face higher levels of stress, yet protective factors can promote their well-being. Moving to the second topic of today's agenda, I will share key findings from my research project that explore the caregiving experiences with Chinese and Vietnamese American family caregivers residing in the San Francisco Bay Area. So as the principal investigator, I was awarded the Silverman Faculty Development Grant from the New York Trust Fund. My colleague, Dr. Sadhana Diwan, served as a co-PI, and we collaborated with community partners such as local NAMI agencies and other ethnic serving community-based mental health organizations. I want to inform that this project spanned multiple years and was completed a few years before the pandemic. So the primary goals of the project were to explore the caregiving experiences among family caregivers within the cultural context and to provide mental health scholars, policymakers, and professionals with insight that could be used to develop and offer culturally responsive intervention and prevention programs to family caregivers. The original project implemented a mixed method design involving three ethnic groups of white, Chinese Americans, and Vietnamese Americans family caregivers. We set out to answer several questions, including what are the overall caregiving experiences among these groups? How do cultural values influence caregiving experiences? And to what degree do protective factors mitigate the impact of caregiving-related distress on their well-being? So I also want to mention that the current presentation only offers a concise overview of our findings from Chinese and Vietnamese American family caregivers. So if you want to learn more about our findings in detail, please feel free to contact me. I would be happy to share them with you. Before presenting the findings, it's very important to mention that this study employed non-probability sampling. Therefore, the findings cannot be considered representative or generalizable. As mentioned, this was a multi-year project using a mixed method design. During the first year, we conducted 6 focus groups with a total of 78 family caregivers from 3 ethnic groups. Out of them, 30 were Chinese Americans and 21 were Vietnamese Americans. The focus groups were conducted in 3 different languages. In the following years, we developed and employed a survey questionnaire consisting of questions from standardized measures and questions based on input from relevant stakeholders. The survey was translated following the WHO's translation standard. A total of 164 family caregivers participated in the survey, including 61 Chinese Americans and 55 Vietnamese Americans. This table displays the traits of Chinese and Vietnamese American participants. So when comparing the 2 groups, some differences were identified in their key demographic characteristics such as their average age, level of education, and relationship to their loved ones with SMIs. So as demographic characteristics can influence caregiving experiences, the differences observed here emphasize the significance of separating sub-ethnic groups for AAs. Another point I want to highlight is the high level of co-residency. As shown in this table, approximately 75% of AA participants stated that they lived with their ill family members. Again, even though our sample cannot be representative, it's noteworthy that this percentage is significantly higher than the 45% reported in the National Alliance of Caregiving study I previously reviewed. Now, I will move to the overall findings with the Chinese and Vietnamese American family caregivers. This table summarizes the findings from the thematic analysis of the focus group data. While upcoming slides will showcase themes and quotes from the Chinese and Vietnamese participants, overall, the participants reported the caregiving challenges and their negative effects on various aspects of their lives. In spite of that, They also shared optimistic attitude about their loved ones' recovery. The participants also discussed how culture influenced their caregiving experiences. I want to mention two things that are not covered in the following slide, so I will share that here now. First, both Chinese and Vietnamese participants highlighted the importance of fulfilling their family obligations through self-sacrifice. Second, is white family caregivers emphasized their partnership with their loved ones with SMIs and presented themselves as advocates. This aspect of advocacy and teamwork were not mentioned by either Chinese or Vietnamese participants. So when we explore the caregiving experiences, all participants from both the groups expressed intense emotions, which they associated with their loved ones' behavioral and emotional changes and the occurrence of multiple psychiatric crises. The participants also shared feelings of powerlessness, helplessness, and loss sometimes. They mentioned experiencing a decline in their own mental health, including feelings of depression, chronic anxiety, and constant worries. Some participants reported experiencing PTSD due to repeated exposure to their ill family members suffering an episode. So moreover, participants spoke about how caregiving had negatively impacted their social and family lives. They emphasized how their ill members' behavior and avoidance of social situations hindered the entire family from attending social events. Additionally, they mentioned that family dynamics were disrupted and sometimes conflict arose related to caregiving. All participants from both groups, again, also agree that the widespread issues of stigma associated with mental health issues and how those exacerbate their caregiving experiences. It's worth noting that during the focus group with Vietnamese American family caregivers, a replacement for the term Ham Than, which translates to mental illness, was discussed due to its negative connotation. The last quote here summarizes what they discussed. It was interesting because this term Tam Than is a frequently used term in various behavioral health documents. But after discussion, the group ultimately decides that Tam 3, which translates to mind, was the most appropriate alternative. So for the rest of our project, we decide to use the term Tam 3 over Tam 5. So although participants faced caregiving challenges and distress, most of them remained positive about their loved one's recovery process. As shown in the example quotes here, they expressed their aspiration for their loved one's recovery and hope for employment and becoming more self-sufficient and independent. Not surprisingly, these hopes for independency were more frequently stated among parents of children with SMIs. When we explore the roles of culture, Chinese participants reported that they frequently encounter feelings of shame and insufficient support from family members who have a limited understanding of mental health conditions. The significance of family support in Chinese culture cannot be overstated. Thus, when they did not receive support from them, it could make their situation more challenging. Okay. Furthermore, the final quote from one participant indicates that some of them struggle to keep a balance between safeguarding their children and encouraging independence. This last quote also highlights the possibilities that the counselor may not fully comprehend the cultural values involved, making this particular family caregiver feel incompetent and inadequate that could have a negative impact on the person's mental health. With Vietnamese participants, we discovered that religion and spirituality were identified as critical coping mechanisms and play a vital role in shaping their attitudes and action toward mental illnesses and caregiving. Some caregivers rely on the Buddhist notion of karma as a way of understanding their hardship, while others found comfort in prayer and building their resiliency to overcome personal challenges. So regardless of a specific religion and spiritual belief held, the core principles encouraged compassionate behavior and emotional acceptance of the challenges associated with caregiving. Moving to the survey findings from both groups, by using a socio-cultural stress and coping model, we investigated the relationship between caregiving stress, protective factors, and overall well-being after taking some cultural and demographic characteristics into account. Our findings were congruent with the previous studies that were conducted with non-AA family caregivers. More specifically, we found that positive attitudes are crucial in promoting well-being among AA family caregivers. This includes having faith in recovery, finding fulfillment in the caregiving role, and maintaining hope for the future. The positive outlook was strongly associated with enhanced self-efficacy because those with self-efficacy have knowledge about SMIs, can navigate mental health care systems, and have confidence in their ability to manage challenges. Such enhanced self-efficacy was significantly related to increased service utilization. So when participants utilized formal resources and services such as NAMI family-to-family psychoeducational program, individual counseling, family therapy, and support group, they reported feeling empowered and confident, which then contribute to a more positive attitude and ultimately improved well-being. So in sum, the survey findings emphasize the importance of providing services to AA family caregivers. So now we'll discuss what we have learned and things to consider regarding AA family caregivers. While there are many discussion points from our findings, the first one is that AA family caregivers experience considerable caregiving-related distresses, and the culture of each group plays a vital role in influencing how caregiving impacts the family caregiver's well-being. Therefore, mental health professionals should understand that family caregivers can develop mental health problems like anxiety, depression, and even PTSD. So despite of caregiving challenges and stresses, protective factors positively contribute to enhanced well-being, and these protective factors can be improved through the utilization of formal services. So mental health communities must proactively take steps to offer services and resources to family caregivers within their cultural context. Also, the stigma surrounding mental illness was found to be prevalent and detrimental. So this indicates an ongoing dire need for advocacy and education to reduce stigma in general and specifically within the AA communities. As mentioned a few times already, there is limited research, knowledge, and resources for AA family caregivers. Thus, increasing research efforts and funding for behavioral health providers and agencies can be one of the first and essential steps. That being said, we now know that family caregivers need resources and services for their care recipients, for the family, and for themselves. So in this slide, I will present the programs and services that has been showing effectiveness in improving family caregivers' well-being, especially with the general population. The most common program and resource is a psychoeducational program that assists family caregivers to enhance knowledge and cope with caregiving challenges. Through psychoeducational programs like NAMI Family to Family, family caregivers can learn how to navigate the complicated mental health system, gain knowledge of various aspects of SMIs, and feel efficient and empowered. Another one is family therapy that include conflict resolution skills. So family therapies can be proven helpful for family caregivers because these services teach problem-solving techniques and solutions. Another one is various intervention modalities like individual therapies to improve positive cognition, such as cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. So all of these programs and services are promising for Asian American family caregivers as well. So based on what we have learned, and as one of the key takeaways of today's workshop, I designed the schema that stressed the importance of supporting AA family caregivers. So in this figure, FC stands for family caregiver, and PSMIs stands for persons with SMIs. While other cultural and contextual factors can impact the family caregiver's well-being, AA family caregivers can benefit greatly from culturally and linguistically responsive services and resources. By utilizing these resources, they can become more knowledgeable, emotionally stable, and empowered and self-sufficient. They will be better equipped to solve problems and communicate effectively with their loved ones with SMIs and other family members. All of this can improve their family dynamics, which will be eventually improving the general well-being of the family members, including family caregivers and then people with the SMIs. Family caregivers' well-being will indirectly contribute to the recovery of their loved ones, because the family plays a really significant role in the AA communities, and then they tend to reside together. So as you can see, the healthy family caregivers, healthy family, and better recovery. So when designing and developing the services for AA family, caregivers, there are several things we need to consider. And I want to highlight 3 points here based on the literature review and my own studies. Okay. The first one is understanding the caregiving trajectory and identifying key stress points. By doing so, we can better understand how critical events and stressors impact family caregivers' coping abilities, support system, and use of resources. This information can also help us determine which types of supports are most effective at different points in the caregiving journey. The second one is, sorry about that. Okay. The second one is to pay more attention to the similarities and differences in the caregiving experiences of diverse AAs of ethnic communities. Even though most AAs share common cultural values, each sub-ethnic group has its own distinct culture, tradition, religious beliefs, and language, and more. Additionally, various AA subgroups experience considerable differences in healthcare, education, and socioeconomic status, which all are related to help-seeking behaviors and service utilization. So caregiving practices and utilization of professional help are also influenced by the level of acculturation, which is strongly linked to English proficiency and accessibility to services. So therefore, it's really important to acknowledge that each AA subgroup has unique characteristics that affect their caregiving attitudes, experiences, and coping practices. So in order to reduce mental health disparities in AA communities, we should avoid grouping them together. Instead, we must give equal attention to each subgroup as distinct entities. The third point is to consider e-health, which is health and mental health services provided over the internet, and m-health, which is services provided through mobile phone networks like apps, as valuable resources for AA caregivers. Going back to the findings from our study, given the effectiveness of service utilization, and we recruited our participants through the collaboration with mental health agencies, we noticed not everybody has been utilizing the mental health resources and services available to them. So we further explored reasons why. And participants from both groups shared some specific obstacles to accessing in-person services besides stigma and other identified structural barriers. These specific obstacles include time constraints, lack of transportation, child care, employment obligations, and just reluctance to disclose their situation to anyone, period. To address these issues, e-health and m-health can enable family caregivers to access services without the added stress of in-person interactions. So one of the few silver linings of COVID-19 is that during the pandemic, e-health and m-health have made significant progress in improvement and become essential in providing mental health care and promoting help-seeking behaviors. Emerging studies with the general population have shown that these e-health and m-health interventions can be effective for individuals with informal and non-professional caregivers during times of stress. Thus, given the autonomy, anonymity, flexibility, and self-paced design of e-health and m-health, creating and implementing resources using these platforms could help AA family caregivers engage in help-seeking more effectively, which ultimately enhance their overall quality of life and promotes well-being. For the remaining time, I would like to briefly go over several selected useful resources that are available for family caregivers. Okay. The issue of caregiver well-being has been a concern at the federal level for quite some time. As an example, in 2012, SAMHSA recognized the negative impact of caregiver burden and called for increased attention to this issue. And to support family caregivers, the SAMHSA has taken a number of steps, including the creation and distribution of resources. On this slide, I have highlighted some of the resources available on the SAMHSA website. Each resource provides valuable information for family caregivers, mental health professionals, and community members. So by visiting these resources, so you can gain helpful insights and tools to support family caregivers. So I really strongly encourage for all of you to visit this website. Okay. The state and local governments also have a range of resources available for family caregivers. For instance, California's Department of Healthcare Services provides information on local treatment options and family support groups, including information about NAMI, as you've seen in here. Okay. However, not all of these resources are tailored specifically to family caregivers of individuals with SMIs and may not fully culturally sensitive and responsive yet, and especially particularly the diverse AA sub-ethnic groups. Furthermore, locating the federal, state, and local resources can be challenging for some family caregivers, particularly those who are unfamiliar with the system, and visiting multiple websites may discourage some family caregivers. This is where our Ohana Center of Excellence can play a significant role. We prioritize holistic and culturally sensitive approaches to cater to the needs of AA and HPI communities. And our Ohana Center of Excellence is aimed to serve as the central location for the AA and HPI behavioral health community. This includes resources such as research-informed online seminars, both live, like today's one, and archived, and community toolkits and links to behavioral health resources. So since our centers of the formal launch in May, we have begun offering workshops on various topics to behavioral health professionals and AA and HPI community members. We will continue to provide more resources and workshops and training and technical assistance in the future. So if you have not done so already, please consider join us and subscribe to our center to be involved and get updates on our work. So this concludes my presentation today. And all of these are bibliographies I used for today's workshop. Okay. So I hope today's workshop has been helpful and informative for you. Again, thank you very much for joining me today. The recording of today's workshop will be available on our Ohana website. Okay, so now I am available to answer any questions and hear your comments if you have. So let me go to, oh, sorry about that. Okay, sorry. I am having a little bit of a difficulty in terms of stop share, and then I will be reading the comment. Good. Sorry about the difficulties. Okay, so thank you, Marie. So please feel free to submit any questions you have, and if you so you have my contact information, so you can email me with any questions. Okay, so one question I got is, what are some ways that future research studies can explore better supporting AA family caregivers for SMIs? That's an excellent question, and that's one of my the desire, and trying to reach out as many behavioral health organizations as possible. But through my research, I learned building the relationship with the behavioral health organizations, especially the helping the AA family caregivers and stakeholders, are very important. So having that in mind, and we apply for the grants as much as we could, and then so that we can conduct more representative studies with larger populations. So like I said, our studies are conducted in the Bay Area in California, and I wonder how other AA family caregivers with limited to much more limited resources have experienced their caregiving experiences. So that would be really great. Okay, so another questions I got is, what are some advice for current mental health clinicians working with Asian American family caregivers with SMIs? So my initial response to that is joining our webinars and trainings, and be involved with our Ohana Center of Excellence, because like I mentioned, we plan to provide services, resources, toolkits, and technical assistance. But in the meantime, the couple of the promising agencies, promising programs I went over will be the one way. But more than anything else, I would like to suggest be culturally humble and listen to what they would like to say. Okay? And so invite them and empower them and listen to their stories, and respect their wishes, and so building this collaboration between the clinicians and families. And in Asian culture, as we mentioned, the family plays a very significant role. And as you saw, a lot of family caregivers actually live with their loved ones with SMI. Okay? So it's a kind of a phrase I said, healthy family caregivers and healthy family, and better the recovery outcomes for the individuals affected by the SMIs. So, do you feel that perceptions are different for second and third generation Asian Americans? That's another great question. Yes, I believe so, okay, because it's even our own studies, the immigrants' parents seems to be holding more traditional values and feel more obligated to care for their loved ones. But the second and third generations often identify themselves as other rather than the parents, and they still fulfill the caregiving responsibilities, and they honor those cultural values. But at the same time, they also have the the struggles inside them. So generation is related to acculturation, it's related to the extent of services they can reach out to. For example, second generation and third generations, they probably to some degree, they prefer the same ethnic groups for their mental health professionals, but not always necessary. They can reach out to the mental health professionals whose primary language is English. So those acculturations and the generations has to be one of the key consideration factors. So thank you. Okay. Thank you for joining today. So thank you for sending the positive comment. Okay. So I'm glad you are subscribing the Ohana Center of Excellence. Okay. I think is any other questions? Another questions was please clarify what would you use the term mental health or mind health? Okay, that's really great questions. And as I mentioned, this was discussed during the focus group with the Vietnamese, the family caregivers. And we learned, I am, like I said, from Korea, so the Vietnamese is not familiar to me, but they spent a lot of time and we decided to go with mind health. And this is another thing, like a culturally humble and willing to learn from them. Maybe we can ask the family caregivers regarding what kind of terms will be most appropriate for them. Okay. So, and then I also learned in Vietnamese, there is multiple languages. So besides what I share with you, so I'm not the expert, but this is the one areas we can count on Vietnamese mental health professionals, and then Vietnamese the family caregivers and people with the illness as an expert, and we ask their opinions. I think there is no more questions, and thank you so much for all of these wonderful questions. It's the learning opportunities for me, myself as well, and thank you for joining us. And please complete the post-webinar survey, so that will be very helpful for us to improve the future webinars and trainings that the Ohana Center will offer to you guys. I'm hoping to see all of you, okay, hopefully, on the next seminars and trainings. Okay, thank you.